I want to explain what a single, common food does to the chemistry of your aging body. And I don't mean eating it for the fiber or the vitamin D. I want to talk about a specific compound, one that most people have never even heard of, that your body actively pulls out of food and stores like a reserve currency against biological decay. But here's the problem. In the modern diet, we are running a massive deficit of this compound. And the research linking this deficit to cognitive decline, muscle loss, and cardiovascular risk isn't just interesting. It is becoming undeniable. I am not going to give you a generic list of 10 superfoods. I am going to explain the exact biological mechanism of a single nutrient that the late, great biochemist Bruce Ames once proposed as a longevity vitamin. And if you are a man or woman over the age of 50 or 60 who wants to protect their brain and their body without expensive supplements or dangerous fads, I want you to stay here for the next few minutes. First, if you are watching this and you are a senior or you care for a senior, I want you to introduce yourself in the comments. Say your first name, your age, and where you are from. I read these comments, and I know many of you share these struggles. This is a space for us to learn together. Now, let's talk about the quiet biological gap that nobody is talking about. The story of ergothioneine. To understand why this compound is so vital, we have to look at the aging body through a completely different lens. When we talk about aging, we talk about aches, pains, memory lapses, and fatigue. But what is actually happening in the tissues? It is a war against oxidation and inflammation. Every cell in your body is like a tiny engine. As it burns fuel, it produces exhaust, free radicals, reactive oxygen species. This is normal. In fact, your immune system uses these reactive molecules to fight off infections. But when you are young, your body has a robust repair system. It produces its own antioxidants, like glutathione and superoxide dismutase, which clean up the mess. As you age, that repair system slows down. The production of these endogenous antioxidants declines. The exhaust builds up, and that buildup damages the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. When mitochondria are damaged, they become leaky. They produce even more exhaust. It is a vicious cycle, a feedback loop of cellular decay. This is why we see age-related diseases like cognitive impairment, muscle wasting, and even cardiovascular stiffening. This is where ergothioneine enters the picture. Ergothioneine is a sulfur-containing amino acid. It is a compound that is structurally distinct from other antioxidants. It doesn't just float around in your bloodstream like vitamin C or glutathione, being used up quickly and excreted in your urine. Here is the genius part of evolution. Humans have a specialized transporter, a genetic switch called OCTN1. This transporter is like a dedicated import channel. It actively pulls ergothioneine out of the food you eat and pumps it into your cells, specifically into the cells that are most susceptible to oxidative stress: the brain, the liver, the kidneys, the red blood cells, and the mitochondria themselves. Think of it like this. If the other antioxidants in your diet are like having a fire extinguisher on the wall, ergothioneine is like having a fire suppression system built into the walls of the most vulnerable rooms in your house. It is accumulated and it stays there. It doesn't get washed away quickly. It builds up over time, providing a persistent, long-term shield against cellular damage. It doesn't just neutralize the fire, it prevents the fire from starting in the first place. But here is the catch. Humans cannot produce ergothioneine. We lack the enzymes to synthesize it from scratch. We are completely dependent on diet. And if you look at the standard American or Western diet, we are severely deficient. It has been estimated that Americans consume only about 1 milligram of ergothioneine per day. But why is that? Because to get it, you have to eat things that are grown in healthy soil or, primarily, mushrooms. The compound is synthesized by fungi and certain soil bacteria. It enters the food chain through plants that have symbiotic relationships with these fungi. This is a basic biochemical mechanism. If you are not eating the foods that provide this preformed molecule, your body cannot build up its reserves. Over time, as your natural antioxidant systems decline and your dietary intake of ergothioneine is low, you are effectively leaving the doors to your cellular power plants unlocked and defenseless against oxidative attack. The consequence? Research is showing that low levels of ergothioneine in the blood are strongly associated with a higher risk of frailty and cognitive decline. The body is literally crying out for a resource it cannot make. So now we have to look at the sources. We have to rank them. While some foods like asparagus, corn, or oats contain tiny amounts, they are negligible. The absolute powerhouse, the undisputed king of ergothioneine, is mushrooms. But even then, not all mushrooms are created equal. This is where the science gets very specific. The button mushroom, which is the white or cremini variety, is the most common mushroom in the grocery store. It does contain ergothioneine, but compared to its wild cousins, it is relatively low. It is a good entry point, but if you are trying to correct a deficit, you have to do better. However, one thing to note is the growing process. If the soil is depleted, even these mushrooms will have lower levels. And the way you cook them matters. Boiling them in water can leach out the water-soluble compounds, so it is better to sauté them or roast them. Next, we have the porcini. Here we start to see a jump. Porcini mushrooms are a favorite in Italian cooking, and they pack a significant punch of ergothioneine. They are a fantastic source, but they are seasonal and can be expensive, and often they come dried. The good news is that the drying process actually concentrates the ergothioneine, so a small amount of dry porcini goes a long way. You can rehydrate them and use the soaking water in soups or stews for an extra nutrient boost. Then we have the oyster mushroom. Now we are talking. Oyster mushrooms are incredibly efficient at producing ergothioneine. In a recent study led by the Leibniz-Institut for Analytische Wissenschaften, researchers found that a daily dose of ergothioneine equivalent to that found in just 4.5 grams of dried oyster mushrooms had profound effects on aging rats. That is a tiny amount. It improved their endurance, increased their muscle mass, and even boosted blood vessel formation in their muscle tissue. If you are over 50 and worried about sarcopenia, that loss of muscle mass that happens naturally, this is a direct hit to your biology. It isn't just about muscles, though. The improved vascularization means better oxygen delivery to tissues. Next is the shiitake mushroom. Shiitake is a traditional source of longevity in Asia, and for good reason. It is a heavy hitter in the ergothioneine game. It offers high bioavailability and is easier to find in most grocery stores than some of the exotic varieties. Shiitake also contains lintenin, a beta-glucan that has immunomodulatory effects. So you aren't just getting the longevity vitamin, you are also getting support for your immune system, which is another system that declines with age, a process called immunosenescence. And finally, the king oyster and maitake. These are the champions. They consistently test with the highest levels of ergothioneine. They are the biological reserve tanks for this longevity vitamin. Maitake, often called the dancing mushroom, has been studied for its anti-diabetic and anti-cancer properties in addition to its ergothioneine content. If you can incorporate these into your diet once or twice a week, you are doing something tangible for your cellular health. But let's talk about practical reality. You might not be able to find maitake or king oyster mushrooms every time you shop. That's okay. What is more important is the regularity of consumption, not just the type. A major study from Singapore involving 499 elderly participants showed something remarkable. Those who ate more than 2 servings of mushrooms per week had a markedly lower risk of cognitive impairment. And a massive Chinese study with over 14,000 older adults found that those who consumed mushrooms daily had a 29% lower probability of cognitive impairment. This isn't about replacing medicine. This is about giving your body the raw materials to protect itself. If you are still watching and this is making sense, type the number 4 in the comments right now. That lets me know you are here for the deep dive. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Robert. Robert is 72. He's a retired engineer. He started noticing that he was forgetting names of people he had known for years. He would go to the grocery store and struggle to recall the list without writing it down. He was also dealing with a general fatigue that he wrote off as just getting older. He had been to his doctor, and his blood work came back normal. No anemia, no thyroid issues, no vitamin B12 deficiency. But he felt like he was running on empty. Now, Robert was eating what he thought was a healthy diet. He ate chicken, fish, vegetables, and his morning oatmeal. But he didn't eat mushrooms. He hated the texture. When I spoke to him, he was looking for a supplement or a pill to fix the issue. I told Robert to do 2 things. First, don't stop seeing your doctor. This is not a substitute for medical care. But second, change the biology by changing the intake. Mushroom supplementation is one thing, but the research suggests that the whole food is often better. The matrix of the mushroom contains vitamin D, selenium, and other bioactives that work synergistically with ergothioneine. For a supplement, you want to make sure you aren't overdosing, because we don't have long-term human data on megadoses. We created a schedule for him, and I want to share this schedule with you because it is practical and sustainable. For the morning routine, breakfast is the easiest place to start. If he's having eggs, sauté some chopped oyster mushrooms with the eggs. Or, he added a handful of shiitake mushrooms to his omelet. If you are eating a grain bowl, toss in some roasted mushrooms. I told him to aim for that 45-gram portion, which is about the size of a deck of cards, a few times a week. This morning intake primes the transporter system for the day. For the afternoon adjustment, lunch was the easiest. Instead of his usual chicken sandwich, I suggested a hearty mushroom soup or a salad with grilled portobello mushrooms. The thinking here is to spread the intake. You don't need to eat a pound of mushrooms in one sitting. You need to constantly top off the reservoir. If you spread the intake, you are constantly providing the transporter with substrate. It is like filling up a gas tank versus pouring it all in and spilling it out. For the evening, the 12-week commitment. Research from the University of Reading showed that older adults who consumed oyster mushrooms 4 times a week for 12 weeks experienced reduced anxiety, improved verbal memory recall, and lower markers of inflammation. This wasn't a miracle, it was biological consistency. Over the course of 3 months, the active compounds in the mushrooms slowly reduced oxidative stress markers in their blood. Robert started this routine. He didn't suddenly become a genius, and he didn't start running marathons. But after about 8 weeks, he told me, the brain fog seems less intense. He felt like he could think clearer. He also noticed his energy levels were steadier. He didn't have that 3 o'clock crash anymore. This is the kind of change that is realistic. It is a slow, steady, biological restoration. It is about preventing the decline, not just treating the symptoms. Now, I have to be radically honest with you. This is the part where I tell you what eating mushrooms will not do. It will not reverse advanced Alzheimer's disease. It will not repair decades of oxidative damage overnight. This is about slowing the progression, protecting what you have left, and potentially delaying the onset of debilitating conditions. If you have an aggressive family history of dementia, this is a tool, not a cure. It is an upstream intervention. As the researchers noted, ergothioneine acts as an alternative substrate for a specific enzyme to produce hydrogen sulfide, which is a protective signaling molecule. This is complex, but it essentially means it helps the body utilize its own repair pathways better. It is not a magic bullet. It is a building block. Furthermore, you have to be careful about where you get your mushrooms. While mushrooms are a fantastic source of nutrition, we don't yet fully understand the ideal blood levels or the exact mechanisms in humans. There are major gaps in our understanding. We don't know exactly how much reaches the brain, how it interacts with the gut microbiome, or why some people have lower levels even when they eat the same diet. There is a genetic polymorphism in the OCTN1 transporter. Some people are just naturally better at absorbing it than others. That is a hard truth. There is also a significant safety warning. Mushrooms can be a source of vitamin D, but that doesn't help if you are on blood thinners, as vitamin K interacts with some medications. More importantly, if you forage for mushrooms, do not eat wild mushrooms unless you are an absolute expert. Mistaking a toxic mushroom like the death cap for an edible one is fatal. There is no antidote, so buy your mushrooms from the grocery store or a trusted supplier. I also want to address the elephant in the room, supplements. While ergothioneine supplements are widely available, the research is still in its infancy. A recent review suggested that while the compound meets the criteria for a longevity vitamin, we still need phase 2 and 3 randomized controlled trials to prove its efficacy. Until then, the food source is the safest, most bioavailable bet. If you decide to supplement, it is crucial to talk to your doctor first, especially if you have kidney issues or are taking medication. The kidneys are the primary route of excretion, so if you have impaired kidney function, you might be at risk for accumulation. So, you have this mechanism. You have this compound called ergothioneine. You know that mushrooms are the primary source, but there is a hidden factor that can destroy your ability to absorb and utilize it effectively. And it is not about your stomach acid. It is a silent saboteur that affects nearly every senior watching this video. You can eat all the mytake mushrooms in the world, but if this one factor is off, your body will not be able to transport the ergothioneine to your mitochondria. It will pass right through you. This hidden factor is inflammation in the gut lining. Specifically, the chronic, low-grade inflammation that comes with age disrupts the efficiency of that OCTN1 transporter we talked about. The transporter is a protein embedded in the cell membrane. It has to fold correctly to function. Pro-inflammatory cytokines, like TNF-alpha and IL-6, which are elevated in aging, change the fluidity of the cell membrane and downregulate the expression of these transporters. If your gut is inflamed due to poor diet, stress, or lack of fiber, the transporters don't work correctly. You become a high consumer, low absorber. You are eating the mushrooms, but the compound isn't getting into the cells where it is needed. It is just decorating your stool. I am going to cover exactly how to identify and fix that gut inflammation to maximize absorption in my next video. It is the missing piece of the puzzle. Without it, you are just wasting your time. I also want to touch on another hidden factor: cooking methods. High heat for a long time can degrade ergothioneine. But the interesting thing is that the compound is exceptionally heat-stable compared to other antioxidants. It doesn't degrade easily. However, if you deep fry mushrooms in inflammatory oils, you are counteracting the benefits. The oil creates advanced glycation end products that promote the very inflammation you are trying to fight. So saute in olive oil or coconut oil. Roast them, grill them, but don't coat them in batter and fry them. There is also the synergy with other foods. Vitamin C, which is abundant in bell peppers or citrus, can recycle ergothioneine in the body. So if you eat mushrooms with a side of bell peppers or a squeeze of lemon, you are enhancing the biological activity. This is the concept of food synergy. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I also want to address a common misconception. Some people think that you can just eat a lot of mushrooms at once and be done with it. But the research on uptake shows that the transporter is saturable. This means there is a limit to how much you can absorb at one time. It is better to have smaller, more frequent servings than one massive serving. So that 45-gram portion a few times a week is much more effective than eating half a kilo of mushrooms on a Sunday. Another interesting angle is the role of the microbiome. We know that the gut bacteria can metabolize ergothioneine to some extent. They can break it down into other molecules. But whether that is beneficial or detrimental is still being studied. Some bacteria produce sulfides that might compete with ergothioneine for transport. So a healthy, diverse microbiome is essential not just for digestion, but for the efficient utilization of this nutrient. This is another reason why a high-fiber diet matters. Now, for those of you who are vegetarians or vegans, this is even more critical, because you are excluding meat and fish, which can be minor sources of ergothioneine. You are relying almost entirely on mushrooms and fermented foods. So if you follow a plant-based diet, you need to be even more intentional about incorporating these fungi into your weekly meal plan. I also want to give a special mention to the use of mushroom powders. You can buy dried mushroom powder and add it to your coffee, your oatmeal, or your smoothies. This is a convenient way to get a concentrated dose without having to change your cooking habits. But again, check the sourcing. Make sure it is third-party tested for heavy metals. Mushrooms are bioaccumulators. They draw everything from the soil, including toxins. So you want to source them from clean, organic farms. So let's pull all of this together. You have a nutrient that is essential for protecting your mitochondria, which are the engines of your cells. This nutrient is ergothioneine. It is found in mushrooms, particularly in the king oyster, maitake, and shiitake varieties. You need to consume it regularly, preferably spread across the week, to keep your transporter systems active. You need to cook it in a way that preserves the compound and avoids the creation of inflammatory byproducts. And you need to ensure your gut is healthy enough to absorb it. If you do all of that, you are building a long-term cellular shield. You are not just popping a pill. You are adopting a lifestyle change. And the research is clear that this compound can provide a significant benefit in preserving your cognitive health and your physical strength as you age. But if you are eating mushrooms and not seeing the benefit, the answer is likely in your gut. The chronic inflammation that comes with age is the wall preventing you from absorbing the resources you are trying to provide. You are throwing food at a locked door. I want you to subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss it when I release that video. Protect your body, protect your mind, and keep seeking the truth. Don't just accept decline. Understand the mechanisms and fight back with knowledge.